Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more seconds to make sure everyone can join from the start. And we should kick things off shortly.
And hello to our LinkedIn Live audience as well. We'll be starting in probably about half a minute here.
We have quite a few people registered, but I'm seeing that they're joining very quickly, so we might be able to kick things off a bit earlier. All right, we have a good group that has already joined in. So while we're waiting for anyone else, the usual housekeeping items. As you all know, the session will be recorded and shared with everyone after. This is a webinar, so you will be on mute for the duration of the session, but we have the Q&A panel below. So I encourage you to please do use it. Ask any questions you might have. We'll try to answer your questions as we go through the session, if it's for a particular use case. If not, we have dedicated time for Q&A at the end, so we'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. All right, with that said, thank you everyone for joining us. This session, we want it to be a practical one. We want to discuss the top AI use cases that you can try today with existing technology to just get you started. We know that AI has been extremely transformative as technology. Everyone is interested in it, they're experimenting with it, but not a lot of people really know where to start from. So today's session is very much focused on giving you those quick wins that you can implement very early on in your journey. For anyone that hasn't met me, my name is Eric Matif. I'm a strategy manager for all things automation and AI. Today, I'm joined by Billy, who probably doesn't need an introduction, considering all the amazing content that he shares with us on a daily basis for automation and now also AI. But I will let him introduce himself anyways.
Yeah, hi everybody, excited to be here. Billy Davis. I work on the customer success team for automation and AI. But yeah, excited to talk AI and these kind of practical use cases and best practices.
All right. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start off by just touching base very quickly on where we are with AI in recruitment this year. What are some of the types of AI that currently exist that you guys can implement in your business? And then we'll dive straight into use cases to show you how you can use those types of AI in your organization today. So here's where we are. AI has undeniably been incredibly transformative in every industry, not just in recruitment. And more than half of the recruitment agencies out there are actively experimenting with AI, or they're in the advanced stages of the planning phase for their strategy. However, only 15% of agencies have actually invested in this technology and are executing on their strategy. And it's not surprising on one side. And what this is telling us is that everyone understands the value of this technology and it can be transformative and provide benefits to your business, but most people don't really know where to start from. It's a big reason why we decided to do this webinar, is to show you some of those common use cases that you can implement very early on in your journey. Because those businesses that have started executing on AI are already seeing early signs of success. From a communication perspective, engagement is more personal, it's faster than it was before, better candidates are being matched to jobs, and even the recruitment and operational side of things is being streamlined. From a screening perspective, using AI to screen candidates has improved the quality of talent that is being moved further in the process or has been disqualified from the application early on. And that has also resulted in placements being made a lot quicker. So when we think about the types of AI that you can implement in your business, there are really two types of AI that you should think of. The first one is user-driven. This will be the technology that you put in the hands of your recruiters that they can use themselves to make them faster and better at what they do. Think of this as using AI for generative, right? What most recruiters are playing around with today. Create content at different stages of the process, from business development through the recruitment side. But it could also be your recruiters using AI to help them be better at building searches that they can execute against the database, and also have an AI model that can help match better candidates against those jobs. And that's a model that goes beyond your traditional keyword to keyword matching, which is the current way of doing things and very soon the old way of doing things. The other type of AI is agentic. This is where it becomes autonomous. AI will be able to complete workflows on its own without the need for a human to constantly execute the prompts in the backend. So as we're going through the session, you will see examples of how you can build AI use cases from a user-driven perspective, but also how you can enhance a lot of those by making them agentic as well. Okay, So let's start with the AI assistant. The focus on the AI assistant will be best practices to help you with data enrichment, with content creation, and we'll also throw in a couple of examples for messaging as well. The first step in a successful AI strategy is integrating AI into your ATS. So a lot of customers that we speak with today, and some of you might be in the same place as well, is if you haven't centralized your AI usage, currently your recruiters are just using whatever solutions they found themselves. In most cases, they're using a free version of an LLM because they don't want to pay for it out of pocket, right? Which only makes sense. But that creates a bunch of challenges that you may or may not be familiar with. The first one is, as an organization, you have no visibility on what technology is being used by your recruiters. Half of your recruiters might be using ChatGPT, the other ones might be using a completely different LLM. And that also has another challenge to it, which is that not every consultant has the same level of knowledge, which means that you could have people who are quite advanced in their usage, but you could also have people that are very junior or are not using AI at all. So when it comes to the content that is being created from your recruiters, that is being sent to your clients and your candidates, you start to see a very big difference in the quality of that content that is generated. And that is the content that is then associated to your brand. Another very big challenge, and the third challenge here, is the fact that every time your team needs to use a third-party LLM to generate content, they need to extract information from your ATS and paste it into that third party. If we think of a very simple example, that's pitching a candidate a job, right? They need to extract the CV, they need to extract the job description, any other data that they deem important, and then paste that into the third party to execute the content. Especially if they're using a free version, that data is going to stay with the LLM to train it further, right? So from a data risk perspective, this is also a big consideration, considering the industry that we're in and the kind of data that you have to work with. So integrating AI into your ATS is a great first step. By centralizing it into your system, the first thing you're doing is you're enabling everyone to use the same LLM. It's also removing the need to extract any data from the ATS because they can easily choose what information they want to work with and include that directly into the prompt. If we think about the challenge of people not knowing AI at the same levels, you can have prompts that are already pre-built for them based on your best practices, what you deem a good quality piece of content, and then you can just have your team easily execute on those just by clicking a button, right? And something we're going to talk about more in a few moments. It's a great way to also standardize the quality of content that is being associated to your business and that your team can then distribute out to your candidates and clients. And from an adoption perspective, AI, in a very similar way to what automation was years ago, is incredibly transformative technology. And with all transformative technologies, change management can be a bit of a friction. So embedding it natively into the ATS is a great first step to create comfort for your team and help drive adoption for AI moving forward. So that's the first step that you need to make sure you have in place before you start thinking about other use cases for AI. Centralize it into your ATS so it's easy and convenient for everyone to use. And from a data protection, you are covered as well. The second thing is, and I'm going to reference automation again, because it was a very similar situation years ago, because of all the possibilities, people get excited very easily. And you start to think about all these interesting use cases that you might want to bring in your business, but you very quickly forget about the basics. And as any transformative technology, think of AI as a marathon, not a sprint when it comes to implementing it, right? So start by identifying what are the most common use cases for generative AI that your team is already using with whatever third parties they might be playing around with. And what you need in terms of technology for this is just the Bullhorn AI assistant. These are the only use cases that I'm covering here. Some of the ones that we've uncovered from conversations with early adopters of this technology that have been identified as the most common ones. From a candidate perspective, they were more focused on creating more valuable data within the candidate profile or improving the quality of data. So this could be improve a candidate CV by restructuring it, or it could be anonymize the candidate CV so it's ready to be sent to a customer. It could also be things like creating a candidate summary. The candidate summary is an amazing data point that can give recruiters some additional context on who that candidate is, why they have a particular set of skills that could be a good fit for a job. But it can also be content that they can then use to pitch that candidate to a customer. From a job perspective, it was a similar thing. Most of the use cases were focused on enriching the records by improving the quality of data or creating new data points to help the recruiter be faster at screening candidates or progressing the right candidates through the process. From a business development engagement with clients, the focus was more on have prompts that can help us quickly generate content that we might want to send to our clients. So write me an email so I can ask a contact about upcoming hiring plans, or help me pitch that particular candidate to a contact requirements for that job that I just created. So candidates and jobs were more focused on improving the quality of data and creating new data points to help the recruiter, while the client side was more focused on generating content that they can easily then push out to their customers. So these are some of the more common use cases that your consultants are already using, most likely already using generative AI for. But what I strongly recommend, and Billy, feel free to jump in here, considering you deal with a lot of our customers as well, ensure you connect with your recruiters, the more senior recruiters, some of the recruiter leaders, to understand what do they rely on AI for now, so that those could be the first things that you bring into your business very early on. Now, with that taken care of, we can get a little bit more advanced with your AI assistant usage. A great first step here is to use AI to extract key information from certain places in your ATS and push that information into the right fields. And this is a very common problem that a lot of businesses are facing, where they're missing key data about their records. And I'm going to use candidate as an example here as a record. You could have candidates in your ATS at the moment that don't have an email address, or they don't have a phone number, or they're missing a job title or a latest employer. In most cases, that information already exists, because if you think about it, when a candidate applies for a job or they give you their CV, they're going to include their contact details because they want you to be able to get a hold of them. And they're also going to have their job title and their latest employer in there. So chances are that either due to human error, when the record was created, the information wasn't put in the right field, or it just wasn't parsed in properly when you parse the CV in, that information wasn't put in the right place or was put in the wrong field. So a way to fix that is to either use just the AI assistant or combine that with an enrichment agent that I'm going to expand on in a few moments, to find that information from the CV and then put it into the right fields. Because if that key data is missing, then your recruiters are not able to work with those candidates, which means they're going to be missed out from searches, and your recruiters won't have a way to contact them either. So here's a step-by-step example of how you can fix this. The first one, and I encourage everyone to run this search just as an experiment to see what you're dealing with. Run a search to see how many candidates you have that are missing any of the above. See how many people don't have an email address, see how many people don't have a phone number or a job title or latest employer. Once you see how many people you have, this is your target group. This is the initial group of records that you can use AI to help you fix and reach the profile, so now you have a way to work with them in the future. Once you've identified that, then build a prompt in the AI assistant that can help you extract that information. Choose where you want that information to be extracted from. In most cases, that data, as we discussed earlier, sits within the CV and the resume. And make sure, I'm going to stress this a few times as we go through the webinar, because you're able to build your own custom prompts and make them unique to your business. Make sure you test before you save those, so that the quality of content created is exactly the way you want it to be and the way you want your recruiters to use. If you're happy with the result, then you can deploy this either for your team to use, so they can rely on the assistant to extract an email or extract a phone number, or you can just have the enrichment agent do that in the background. By using an enrichment agent, you could have it extract all that information and then just automatically populate all those fields within Bullhorn. So every candidate that you have that is missing an email address or a phone number could be enriched with the enrichment agent in the background, and your recruiters can just benefit out of that. The exact same example that I gave you for candidates, you can apply on job records as well. Extract key information from an internal description and populate it into the relevant fields. Another example here is more focused on creating new data. So, and the candidate summary that we talked about earlier is a great example for this. It can be an incredibly beneficial data point for your recruiters, not only to get a better understanding quicker of who the candidate is, what are their key skills, and what kind of jobs would be a good fit for, but it's also a very convenient data point that they can use whenever they want to pitch that candidate to a customer. Now, in the world before AI, a recruiter having to summarize a candidate profile, unless they're actually pitching that candidate to a client, they're not going to go through that effort, right? It's just not a scalable strategy. With AI, you're significantly improving the process, because with a press of a button, you can structure the candidate CV or any other information into a brief summary that can give them what they're looking for. When we combine that with the enrichment agent, you're now able to create a new data set that is available on every candidate you have in your ATS. And it could also be the first thing you see as a recruiter whenever you open the candidate profile. So here's how we do that. First step, figure out what the ideal candidate summary is for your business. Is that a 100, 150 word paragraph? or is that 4 to 5 very concise bullet points? Or it could be a more structured summary that has headers for each category and then a bit of context for each header as well. Whatever that summary structure might be, agree on what that is for your organization, and then create a custom field within the candidate record that you can even put onto a new card, or you could have it be the first thing that a recruiter sees whenever they open the profile, or even from the binoculars view on the slide out, right? The next step from there, build a prompt. The same way as we saw earlier with the data extraction, create a prompt to structure a candidate CV based on information like the resume, employment history, categories or skills, or any other data that you might want to work with, and restructure that CV into a summary that you can then put into that field. Make sure to test before you save it, but then execute the enrichment agent to then create a summary for every candidate and place it into that new field. So whether it's all the candidates you have today or any net new candidate that you add moving forward, this agent can just run in the background and create these valuable data points that your recruiters can rely on moving forward. Same example here from a jobs perspective. Won't go into too much detail because it's pretty much the same logic, but think about other data points that are specific to jobs that might be quite helpful for your recruitment agent that can improve the internal description every time a job is created. Or the more popular one is have an enrichment agent create an external job description for every job that you currently have. It's removing that extra step for your consultants to have to go and have to take whenever they work on your job. Similar structure, figure out what an ideal external job advert looks like for your business, create a prompt, choose what information you want to use for that prompt, test it before you save, and then just deploy it in the background. A few honorable examples before I hand it over to Billy, who will take us onto the matching and screening side of things. But these are other use cases that we've heard come up quite a bit, and it could be interesting things that you can deploy in your business as well as you start to adopt AI a little bit more. One, from a data extraction point of view, a lot of candidates nowadays are including their LinkedIn profile. So you could build a prompt that can extract that candidate's LinkedIn profile and place the link into a custom field. So it's very easy and convenient for your recruiter to find it and go into LinkedIn and see that candidate profile. Another one that has been proven to be particularly helpful, and this can be a combination of data enrichment and messaging, is create interview tips for every job. You could have the agent create the interview tips based on the job profile. And then if it's put in a custom field, you can dynamically merge those tips into emails whenever you're sending interview reminders to your candidates through Bullhorn automation. Hopefully this gave you a few ideas. I'm now going to hand it over to Billy, who will talk us through the matching agent.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Kind of similar to what you were talking about a little bit earlier in the slides as well. From an AI matching perspective, you have both kind of the manual option where you kind of have a match portion that can be kind of manually initiated and kind of find that perspective, and then you have the agent version, which is kind of autonomously utilizing that AI matching engine to find you the right candidates faster and better. So to start with, just kind of give an overview about kind of AI matching in general, right? The hierarching goal of it is to match the right candidate at the right time to the right position. Obviously, there's tremendous opportunity with that. When you do this correctly, you have increased recruiter efficiency, faster submittals, shorter time to fills, and then improve both candidate and client experience. And then the common challenges that come along with matching, right, is data quality, because the bedrock of quality matching is the data foundation that it's built upon. And then because of that, also kind of recruiter and kind of confidence in return matches, which can kind of also impact that change management piece. Obviously, kind of matching has been around quite a long time as far as that technology goes. But it's probably the most impactful AI application when you do it correctly, because it's obviously core from a staffing and recruiting perspective, is to find candidates the right position as fast as you can. So going on to where to start. You have to set kind of a quality foundation, and that typically starts from a system process, and then that flows into a data foundation itself. So the first thing that you need to do is ensure that your job and candidate data are aligned. So, whatever kind of structure or form that looks into, whether it be you're utilizing things like categories, industries, skills, ensuring you're having kind of robust information filled out consistently in both of those entities. Those are the things that are going to be leveraged and used from the matching perspective. Obviously, candidate and job enrichment is really important. because if kind of a database left to its own devices will have kind of stale and outdated or incomplete data. And obviously that's where AI and automation can help to get that candidate and job data in a better spot from a quality perspective at scale. And then you really, from a match perspective, want to focus on answering these two questions in a better way. Is how current is candidate data that you're using from a matching perspective? And then how likely can match candidates be actually reached if you're texting them, emailing them, et cetera? Because if you find a fantastic match, but the candidate data is outdated, 3 years, 4 years old, right? That's going to frustrate your recruiting team. And then even more frustrating if you find a candidate that's a great fit, but then you can't reach them. You can't get a hold of them. So you want to ensure that you're kind of thinking about both of those components for sure. And then also, once the match occurs, what happens, right? Is your submission flow optimized? Do you have kind of that in a good spot where you are, ensuring everyone's updated, nobody's kind of slipping through the cracks of the process. You're notifying people when the job's no longer available. And you can kind of keep things moving along as they should from a submission flow perspective. So third item here is around kind of just making a decision upon the AI model that you want to use. So how do you want to match? Do you want that to be ontological based, where you're looking at kind of preset kind of word associations and things? Do you want that to be kind of more of a semantic matching, where you're looking primarily at kind of candidate position and job titles? What fields or what information do you want to match between the candidate and the job? You're looking at candidate resume to the job description on the job. Are you looking at things like skills, categories, industries, pay rate requirements, things of that nature? So you need to kind of obviously make that decision and figure out what's going to work best. And then once you have that decision, you need to ensure that your data is structured optimally for that model, right? If you say like, hey, I want to match off resume and job descriptions, but you don't have quality information in your job descriptions for jobs, or you don't have candidates with resumes, obviously that's not going to work out well. And then, can your technology stack change models to kind of optimally get you the results that you're after, depending upon what is going to suit you best? So it's really important consideration, especially kind of thinking about it from a starting standpoint. Next is some areas that you can improve and kind of to improve and get better results. So you have kind of a whole component here around kind of automation optimization opportunities. So obviously from a data quality perspective, that's first and foremost, getting to a spot where you can build better trust in the data that's in the system, ensure that's getting updated, unlocking the ability for candidates to update their own information, for example. That's where also kind of like some resume parsing can come into play and be very helpful as well. Again, talking about that process flow where automation can help you ensure those submissions are flowing through. You're notifying people where they are in the process. You're following up with anything that's getting stuck or taking longer than expected. Database engagement rates go hand in hand with better matching. The higher portion of your database that you're engaging and talking with, the better your matching pools are going to be. And then, ensuring that you're, utilizing automation to its utmost as far as getting information in the right places like skills, categories, industries, pay rates, any other information that you're trying to align on those job and candidate records. From a strategy optimization standpoint, I think the biggest thing that I've seen be successful in improving matching results is targeting recently engaged candidates. And you can define what recently means, in your business. That might be 3 months, that might be 6 months, that might be in the last year. But the two benefits that unlocks is you can trust the candidate data better because there's been some recent engagement. So it's less likely that the candidate data is stale that you're kind of matching off of. And then obviously, if you've engaged with them somewhat recently, you have a much higher success rate when you reach out to the candidate about matching, especially compared to somebody who you haven't talked to in a long time or you've never talked to from a recruiting perspective. And then definitely want to employ the 80-20 rule when rolling this out and kind of getting off the ground. You want to optimize your matching for your highest kind of volume of jobs and candidates that drive the most revenue for your business. So don't get caught up on kind of the onesie twosie type opportunities. Think of kind of the bread and butter kind of job candidate pools that you've built And that is kind of the ideal place to start from a matching component. Then lastly, looking at some additional best practices that you can kind of think about and use to really supercharge your results with AI matching. As with any technology, like Eric alluded to earlier, optimizing the change management is going to make it much smoother. So a couple of examples of things that I've seen in that have been successful for clients. Putting matched candidates back into web responses with automation, just so you kind of you separate out the recruiter UI in the ATS, and then you have kind of these matched candidates getting work communicated with in the background, and then resurfacing them to the kind of the submission UI flow once you kind of qualified or you want to get it in front of a recruiter. Same thing around recruiter notification optimization. So instead of just notifying a recruiter of here's all the people that we found, doing something like taking your matches, texting them, emailing them, communicating with them, seeing if they're interested, available. You can even put some kind of light screening filters in, things of that nature, and then returning that kind of filtered result back to the recruiter so then they can kind of capitalize on it. And then obviously always from a change management perspective, anytime you can incorporate your recruiters into the process, their feedback, you're going to get much better kind of adoption and much less friction in kind of the new process in the change. I've also seen kind of an opt-in process work really well from a candidate perspective. Obviously, like you have to think about how large you want to start with your matching pools and things of that nature. But if candidates are kind of opting in to getting matched and getting those communications, your kind of conversion and your engagement rates will obviously go much higher. And then lastly here, something I call kind of the priority waterfall approach for matching pools, which is using your own data to better kind of feed into the models and better kind of get results. So for example, you could first, for a job that comes through, you could find matches from a pool of candidates that have positive past placement history with your organization. And then if you want to add additional matches, you could then go to, candidates with positive past submittal history, and then like on down. So it kind of creates this cascading waterfall approach where you're giving priority based off of your past data and history that you have access to, which can be a really quality way to incorporate kind of that secret sauce of the staffing recruiting world of having all this kind of this data at your disposal, outcome data of what happened. Okay, so that sums up AI matching. Now we're going to go to AI screening. So if you want to hit the next slide, we'll start with an overview here again. So the goal for the AI screening component is to, again, provide a consistent quality screening experience that isn't limited by scale to identify the best talent. Kind of some of the common opportunities that this unlocks is gives you the ability to screen 24/7, 365, right? You can screen all hours of the day or night. Doesn't matter if your recruiters are in the office, doesn't matter if it's a weekend, right? The AI screener can do that all day, all night, not constrained by time in that way. It's also something that the candidate can take at their own convenience, right? So they can initiate it when it's a good time for them. They don't have to kind of coordinate a time or, take a lunch break at a particular time, right? They can do it at their own convenience, which can be very helpful. Provide a consistent and standardized experience. So, you can do that obviously at scale. Providing an improved candidate experience, especially, from a few different applications of the AI screener. Ensuring that it's consistent and standardized is a way to improve that. But then also, if there's scenarios where candidates aren't getting screened in a timely manner, or maybe not even getting screened at all, right? It's a vastly improved experience if you can provide that. It improves your data quality because now you have at your disposal, obviously, the transcript, chat, and the voice portion. You can do all sorts of interesting things with that information, and then ultimately increases your recruiter efficiency because you essentially have digital recruiters kind of consistently screening for you in the back end, and then there's different ways that you can surface the results of those to your teams to make the results better. So getting into where you should likely start with AI screening is web applicants. That's where we have seen the most success, because it creates a win-win scenario right off the bat, especially if you have a high volume of web applicants. Whereas if you have a high volume of web applicants, it's very unlikely that even a strong portion of those web applicants get communicated with, followed up with, and or screened. But obviously, with an AI screener, you can ensure 100% of them get reached out to and have the opportunity to get screened. Applicants are also the most motivated group because they're coming to you. So you see typically much higher kind of conversion and overall participation rates. And then it unlocks tremendous value for your organization from a candidate pool perspective, not only for the specific job that the person's applying to, but then you get this robust data set that you might also be able to use to find, a good fit for another position as well. And then some best practices that you want to put into place here, things like utilizing kind of dynamic automation follow-up to increase your engagement and conversion percentages. Talk a little bit about that more in the automate better results section as well. You want to optimize your job posting and website traffic. So obviously you can do things to ensure that, jobs are not stale on your job board. After X amount of time, you're taking them down and reposting them if they're still active. And then obviously the more traffic you can push to your website and job board, the more applicants you can get, and the more they can kind of go through this process, which can kind of create a nice, really dynamic flywheel. And then lastly, you want to be able to kind of sift and sort for your recruiters so that you're saving them time, and they don't have to kind of manually review all the applicants, and you can kind of headline kind of where their attention should be. Next section is empowering your recruiters. So this goes hand in hand with some of the change management and kind of the rollout side of things, but giving them visibility and control about the process is found it to be very helpful. So allowing recruiters, for example, to modify, view, and add questions in the screening process. So obviously, AI can create those dynamic questions, but then you're giving them some visibility and control over if they want to add any additional ones, if they want to modify anything. I've also seen like a sign-off process be utilized before it launches live to candidates. So again, just kind of building another layer of kind of verification, kind of trust before it goes out. And then you can also do things like, pick job families to include or exclude in this process. Just again, giving the recruiters more sense of control, which typically helps with their perception of it and kind of trust building side of things. Other best practices to empower your recruiters is kind of customizing notifications. So including all the information for the recruiter to evaluate, kind of quickly sort about that screen inside of it can be really helpful. And that's where you can see leverage the power of automation to do so. Include whatever merge tags you think are pertinent. Have the ability to have from a single click go to the record inside the ATS to see anything additionally that they want to find. I've seen that be extremely successful. And then also, resurfacing quality screens is another way that you can get some great results for your recruiters and kind of help them with the AI screening side. So next section is around some ways you can use automation to get better results. So I've seen kind of knockout questions be deployed in especially the chat portion of the survey, utilized for kind of must-haves for the role. And then if those kind of must-have requirements aren't met, you can use that from a trigger perspective to, route the applicant, notify recruiters differently, et cetera. So it could be a great way to kind of sift and sort up front. You may decide you want to AI screen somebody who gets knocked out. You may decide maybe we don't want to. So you have that flexibility, that control to be able to do so. But it could be a great way to, ensure that must-haves are kind of passing through to the recruiter kind of level whenever you're passing something from the AI screener side. The custom notifications and triggers. So not only being able to customize the notification content, but then being able to customize when notifications happen. So I've seen that used very successfully based off of kind of screening scores. So kind of surfacing high quality screens to recruiters can be a great way to kind of get them targeted in on the right folks, especially from a high volume perspective. Dynamic follow-up. So this is that idea where you try multiple times to get conversion. So instead of just asking an applicant to take the AI screener once, you could have a cadence of 3 or 4 attempts built in, but then that follow-up stops whenever the screen does get complete. So you get that smart dynamic follow-up, which can greatly increase your overall conversion rates. And then, screen candidate visibility. I've seen some great things happen here, both from an automation perspective and an analytics business intelligence perspective. But, building notifications or dashboards for high quality screen candidates that aren't placed, submitted, no activity in a certain amount of time, those types of things. So then you keep kind of them top of mind for any other additional opportunities, can be a great way to unlock additional submittals, interviews, and placements. And then lastly here, looking at some additional use cases that I've seen with the AI screener that have been pretty cool and pretty exciting. So I've seen clients that are utilizing it not only for specific job screening, but then also kind of just general candidate pre-screening overall. So they're kind of repurposing, creating kind of a generic job for this purpose. Clients are doing this for initial intake screening. Seen some clients that, if after X amount of time someone added to the database hasn't been screened by an internal recruiter, it kind of this AI pre-screen gets deployed. And I've seen clients utilize this for rescreening for candidates that have fallen out of touch with. So again, somebody you haven't spoken to in 12 months, 18 months, whatever time frame you define, you could trigger this off and get kind of better quality information in your database and kind of and more engagement as well. Also, I've seen clients that are utilizing it from an interview practice and prep standpoint. So kind of treating it like a trial run for the candidate, in preparation for an actual interview with the client, and then utilizing, the transcript, the information there to provide feedback to the candidate and how they can improve, which I think is a pretty cool way, a pretty creative way to utilize it. And then have also seen kind of creating an optional path, for a candidate where even for kind of selected submissions and not necessarily matched or web applicants, in a communication, giving the option to the candidate, do you want to book time with a recruiter to have a recruiter, a human screen, or do you want to take this AI screen at your convenience, whenever you want? I've seen that be also a quality approach, another way to get some value out of the AI screener.
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute there. Before we head into the Q&A, there was just another very interesting use case that I've even heard a few times come up from customers that we've spoken to. Back in the automation days when automation was still being rolled out and it was very exciting for a lot of people and it was still quite new, we had this concept of silver medalists, right? People that make it in the final stages of the recruitment process, but don't quite make the cut for that job, have an automation that puts them into a silver medalist program. With the screening agent, it's a very similar thing because the screening agent will score every candidate depending on how they perform for the interview. So that score could be criteria that you use to then add these candidates into a hot list or a tear sheet, depending on where you're based. So these could be candidates that you prioritize for opportunities in the future. Maybe not silver medalist, it could be bronze medalist, but it's a great talent pool that you can segment and tap into whenever you have future similar opportunities you want to work.
Yeah, great point.
All right, so heading into the Q&A. While I'm sifting through the questions, I know we had a lot of questions on, are we going to share the recording and the slides? I see our marketing team is replying, but for anyone that hasn't seen it, we will share the recording and the slides with you after. So you can go back to the use cases and you can follow the step-by-steps examples that we gave you as well. One of the questions that we had was, can we see a list of all the data enrichment agents and how many are there? Billy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, we have, there is kind of standard, there's kind of standard prompts for the enrichment agent that we could certainly share. And we have some resources on. But then the other component is you can build your own kind of customized use cases and prompts. So it's kind of similar to automation where, kind of creativity is kind of the limit as far as what could be done in a lot of ways. So we couldn't provide an exhaustive list of everything you could do, for example, but obviously we have kind of things that obviously we're seeing more common than not from that perspective. And then you have kind of that same ability from an automation perspective of kind of where you can utilize your imagination from a customization perspective.
Yeah, we had a question from Sarah as well on what is the data enrichment agent? Where is it getting that personal data from? So just to expand on that, and that's why I also gave the example of test your prompts before saving them first. Whatever use case you can think of from a data extraction perspective, this would be the enrichment agent being leveraging the AI assistant to find that data and extract it. So the first step for you, whatever enrichment agent you're building, is to go and create that prompt first. This is where you can decide what kind of content you want to extract, where you want to extract that content from, and build that logic in a way that extracts the data in the exact same format that you want to be extracted. Once that's done, you can then execute the enrichment agent to use the AI assistant to find that data and put it into the right field. So the data that is being used is the data that sits within Bullhorn that the AI assistant can work with and that the data enrichment can leverage to extract and push data.
Yeah, awesome. I see a couple questions too about kind of like how the AI screener can be launched or initiated. So it can be triggered via email or text, kind of, similar from a kind of delivery standpoint that you're used to from an automation perspective. So you do have that flexibility and control. And I've also like you could potentially do some other customized things, with the ability to do so, kind of kick that off. So yeah, you do have kind of that omni-channel approach and availability from a, how to initiate the screener.
There is also a question on whether there will be any training on using the AI screening or the agents or the assistant. There is plenty of content and resources around that are available in the hub. But as part of your implementation particularly for the agent side of things, you will be supported.
Yeah, well, another question here that I'm seeing, fantastic questions, by the way, everyone. So I appreciate you putting them in. And if we do run out of time, we'll make sure that we follow up with anybody who has submitted a question. One question is, how much control do we have over creating the prompts? Incredible amount of control. So if you're used to any kind of GPT interface, it's very similar where you can talk to the LLM, custom tasks, custom prompts, custom customizations. There are tremendous amounts of things that you can do to kind of customize from a control perspective on those prompts and the outputs.
We also have a couple of questions on the LLM that is being used for the AI assistant as to whether you need to choose one or you need to bring your own. The answer to that is, honestly, it's up to you. You will receive an LLM from us out the box that you can use. So in case you are worried about which is the right one and you don't want to go through the stressful process of figuring it out or dealing with a third party, you can just go with the LLM that comes out the box with the AI assistant. Or if you already have your own LLM that you want to leverage, you can bring that in as well. So the choice is entirely in your hands. One of the overwhelming feedbacks that we received from customers, particularly the early adopters, was that there was this need to simplify the process on getting on generative AI. So that's why we decided to give you support by providing you with our LLM. Okay.
Cool.
A few questions on where does AI agents sit within Bullhorn?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, well, I guess AI agents overall. Was that the question?
Says where is Bullhorn AI agent? So I guess we can we can kind of answer that in a few ways.
Yeah, because obviously there's several agents, so kind of depending upon the agents where they will appear. I think the easiest way for me to kind of break it down, as I've described the kind of clients I've worked with too, is really the agents are, AI plus automation, right? So it's like automation is triggering the AI steps and those items to kind of the segments or the triggers that you want to pull through. But so where you can find Bullhorn AI, currently is, candidate entity, client contact entity, job entity, obviously through either the AI assistant screening questions, obviously are on the job entity. So it's a few places and obviously expanding to many more in the near future.
Will this data enrichment tool be used to extract data from a CV that is in a header? So the header of the CV, often parsing can miss that data. Yes, that is pretty much a great use case for it. It's because due to sometimes poor parsing or human error, that information ends up getting missed or is put in the wrong field. The data enrichment agent is a perfect example of how you can fix that. It can identify data out of the entire candidate CV, and then you can build a prompt that extracts it in the exact right format and then push it into the right field, whether that's an email or a phone number or other fields that you might care about. Okay. How do I turn the AI assistant on? We've had a few questions on this. How do you turn the AI assistant on and how do you turn on AI agents? It depends on what you have with Bullhorn today. So if you are a Bullhorn customer, the best advice that I can give you is reach out to your account manager and they can give you the shortest path to getting on the AI assistant and all the agents or any other AI tech that we might have.
Yeah, a lot of questions about that one. And I was kind of going through and trying to mark them off that I
Yes.
see, so we can see the rest of them here. Okay, so there's a couple about transcripts or kind of what information is returned from the screening side. So the questions that get asked from the screening, the voice screening portion, all the questions and the responses are kind of recorded from a transcript perspective, and then you get a text copy of that transcript. It does write back to a note on both the job and the candidate record. And then like the score, for example, the screening score for that particular role is something that gets written back to the submission record. And then you can do all sorts of, like I've seen clients that have copied that to the candidate record. Obviously, there's additional things you could potentially move it to if you do desire. And then there also the chat portion of the screening, any answers there, you have the ability to write to fields inside of Bullhorn as well. So especially when you talk about kind of a data enrichment side of things, that is a very powerful use case.
Okay, I think we're a little bit over time now. We still have many questions coming in, so we will make sure to follow up with everyone. There is a question about multiple language support. Reach out to your account manager. There's some very exciting things happening there with supporting multiple languages aside from English. So we'll have content to share with you that soon. With that, I
Yes.
want to thank everyone for joining us. This has been a great session, a lot of amazing questions, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.